Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Welcome to what I know you will find to be a great, stimulating and inspirational session at this year's ITU's Global Innovation Forum. Using the power of storytelling to be a great innovator is the title of this session. And I'm Max Jacobson-Gonzalez. I'm in charge of audiovisual production here at ITU, which, as I hope you know, is the United Nations Specialized Agency for ICTs, or Information and Communication Technologies. If someone asked me to describe what I do, I might say that I'm a storyteller. My job involves getting a story across either with video or sound or both, engaging an audience, keeping them interested, stimulating their curiosity to know more. None of this is new. We've been telling stories for thousands of years, from prehistoric hunters telling tales of their exploits on their cave walls, to the Lumiere brothers using the power of celluloid and light to create early films, to parents telling their children stories at bedtime full of wonder and imagination. Now, I always feel that at the very heart of storytelling is a good story, and of course, a good storyteller. You're in for a treat because you're going to be meeting one today. Nuseir Yassin, our keynote speaker, some of you may know him as Nas Daily, has managed to get a loyal following of tens of millions of people on social media, avidly watching the content he creates. His project to tell 1,000 stories in 60 seconds on a plethora of subjects with all sorts of people around the world is highly addictive. And if you haven't watched some of his stories already, I can guarantee that you will be wanting to do so after this. He's also produced longer stories than this, and in fact, he's created his own NAS Academy, but he'll tell you all about this, I'm sure, in the minutes to come. His stories are powerful, they're poignant, and the style is highly energized, and above all, it is completely and utterly engaging. Following his presentation, Nuseir has agreed to hold a no-holds-barred Q&A, so make sure you stay with us for that. So without further ado, I will now hand the floor over to Nuseir Yassin. Nuseir Yassin, please take it away.
Hey, Max, thank you so much for the introduction. This is very, very cool. It's an honor to speak to you guys. Should I begin?
Please do so.
That's it. All right, I'm on my own. I don't know how many people I'm talking to, by the way. I don't know where they're from. I don't know how they look like. So I'm going to assume there is 1 million people and they all speak English. That's what I'm going to assume. All right. Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen real quick. All right. It's working, yeah?
It is.
Thank you so much, ITU, for inviting me over. I'll start by a quick introduction as to the story of Nas Daily, how I ended up sort of talking to you guys here. And in my session today, I want to talk about storytelling, how to tell a story that's not boring. And I'll go into some details as to some examples of stories that we made previously. And the hope is that you can, after this session, go and tell your own stories in your own way. To begin, my name is not Nas. My name is Nuseir Yassin, like yes sire, no sire. It's a very complicated name, so I decided to go by the nickname Nas, and I'm 28 years old, so almost 30. My background started, in very basic origins. I grew up as a Palestinian Israeli, and I know this is a subsidiary of the United Nations, so you know how complicated Palestine and Israel are. So ever since I was a kid, I wanted to escape and go to a place that has no problems, which is the United States. No problems whatsoever. And I was lucky enough to get into Harvard and get a full scholarship to study economics there. After graduation, I decided to get a job in New York as a software engineer. Nothing that I did in the first quarter of my life has anything to do with storytelling or has anything to do with video making. I got a job as a software engineer, just looking at a computer screen for 9-10 hours every day. And then at some point, I asked myself a very, very simple question. When are you going to die? Turns out there are two people that have that answer, God and Google. And I asked Google because it's easier. And then you type life expectancy, male, average. Turns out The life expectancy is 76 years. On average, I was going to die at age 76. Back then, I was 24. 24 out of 76 is 32%. That's when I realized I'm 32% done with life. I am 1/3 dead. And for me, that was the wake-up call to leave my job and do whatever I wanted to do and go around the world and tell stories. And this is how Nas Daily started. I came up with an idea. I'm going to make videos. Why videos? Because the most engaging stories are done via video, not text, not pictures anymore. And in the future, it'll be VR. And I wanted to keep my stories to be 1 minute. Why? Because you're too damn busy to listen to me talk for 1 hour. I don't know why you're doing that today, but on average, most people just have 1 minute to give you, and you just got to tell them a story in that 1 minute. And this is how Nas Daily started. People Daily. I want to play you the first video I ever made, just to show you how terrible Nas Daily was. There you go.
Are you trying to get this to be awkward?
Maybe. Is this shit working?
I don't know.
I have no clue why I'm doing this, but I think it'll be fun. Here's the idea. Once a day, I'm gonna make one video that's 1 minute long. That's it.
In New York City, off to Egypt today, Kenya, Ethiopia, India, then Nepal, then Japan, and then all the way to San Francisco, and then back home to New York City. Coming with me is one drone, one heavy camera, one GoPro, Venmo tees, and protein bars. The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. Jokes. Let's do this. That's day one. See you in Egypt tomorrow.
This video sucks. I didn't know how to make videos. I didn't know how to tell stories. I tried to tell a story in this video, but I really just couldn't. There was no like cohesive, like entertaining or interesting thing in this. But I committed. I said to myself, making videos on the internet and telling stories is the future. So after 1,000 days, I made 1,000 videos. Never missed a day, not even once. Even if I went to the hospital, even if my parents went to the hospital, the commitment was to make 1,000 stories in 1,000 days. And to my surprise, my storytelling became better. The video capabilities became better and better, and people started to watch. I traveled to 64 countries, made videos from 64 countries, probably your countries and my country. The videos were viewed 9 billion times, amassing over 31 million followers on the internet. This is 31 million more people than I thought would ever be interested in my stories. And after that, started Nas Academy, which is essentially a school for the creators. You know, doctors go to medical school, lawyers go to law school, and we want creators to go to Nas Academy because storytelling is very, very, very difficult. And this is why you're all here, I assume, because, you know, what is the most effective way to tell a story that people engage in? How can you do that? Now, we specialize in video. And in video, there's a lot of things that matter. The visuals, the talent, the music, the audio, the camera work, and the sound effects. But the truth is, none of that matters. It's really the story that matters. The words that you use in the video matter. Because I believe if you tell the right story, if you use the right words, in today's world, because of the algorithm, because of social media, because of Facebook, because of YouTube, because of Twitter, one story, the right story, can change elections, can start a riot, and can change someone's life. It can be the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world. One video is all it takes to make the whole world either explode or start to be or prosper. And That is incredibly powerful. So how do you tell the right story about your product, your business, or your country, or your race, or your gender? How do you tell the right story? This is a question I've been asking myself for, 1,000 days. And, I came up with some sort of a rubric, some sort of a framework to try to understand what are the 3 key pillars to telling a good story. And I summarize them into this. The story has to be simple. The story has to be organized. The story has to be relatable. So I'll give you an example. In today's world, if you're in academia, or if you're in the UN, or if you're in ITU, or if you're in any government in the world, most likely you talk in very sophisticated language. This is an example that I've always wondered. There are so many ways to tell the same story. This is one complicated way. If you intake a minimum quantity of 2 liters of H2O on a daily basis, you will remain hydrated and enjoy a greater level of positive health. In other words, you're using such complicated words. You can just say water is good for you. Drink water. The issue with today's world is that we do not simplify things enough. We try everybody to use the most complicated word just to show that we know how to say it. And that's the main issue I see really with the academia world, with the politicians, with really many, many people who are in corporate world. Just say drink water, water is good for you. And you may think, well, Nas Daily, this is kind of an idiotic way to speak. You kind of need to elevate your speech to tell a better story. And to those I say, well, you don't. The smartest guy in the world, Albert Einstein himself, says it. Make everything as simple as possible, but no simpler. And unfortunately, in today's world, we lost track of this quote. And we start using, different words for things that are simple. Hydrate, quench, slurp, digest, satiate, consume. Just drink. To tell the right story, you have to use as simple words as possible. You have to unlearn English. So everything I learned at Harvard, all these essays that I was writing at Harvard, I was like, only my professor would understand this complicated sentence. The mass media, people on Facebook, someone that is scrolling their Facebook feed, they don't get it. And even if your audience is not Facebook, if your audience is politicians, even politicians want simpler sentences and simpler ideas. You look at the world's most powerful politicians right now, they've definitely unlearned English for a reason. So, I want to go through an example of what happens when you unlearn English and simplify things and put them in a video. What happens? I'm going to talk about the world's most boring topic. And I'm going to show you examples of how simplifying stories and putting them on video can actually create good results, even if the topic is boring. This is the topic: Singapore's waste management. Nobody cares about the waste management infrastructure of Singapore. Pretty much most people in the world don't even know where Singapore is on the map. This is where I live right now, by the way. And I want to show you an example where I took these stuff from a, like the agency's website. And I want to show you an example of how wording things differently makes a big difference. This is how corporate people describe Singapore's waste management. I'm going to read it to you just to show you how complicated it is. Semakau landfill opened on 1st April 1999 and is currently Singapore's only landfill facility. Covering an area of 350 hectares, it is expected to meet the country's solid waste disposal needs up to 2035 and beyond. In 2016, the landfill received an average of 2,189 tons of WTF plant ash and non-incinerable waste daily. It continues. The garbage is transformed into, The garbage is transformed into ash by Singapore's incineration plants and then transported to this island. It is then disposed of into water between two islands. The water is divided into cells. These cells are drained before ash fills them. Thereafter, it is covered with soil so that the birds can pollinate them and nourish the plants. This measure taken also ensures that the flora and fauna in the area are intact. In fact, it is flourishing. The area is so exceptionally clean that some locals even visit the place for wedding photos. What the hell is flora and fauna? I know what flora and fauna is, but for the average person who doesn't speak English, they don't know what that is. My mom doesn't know what that is. And, you know, when you look at, like, you know, this is the kind of like the way the island looks like, right? Like, you know, it's beautiful. They you know, it's taken care of. There's not a single piece of trash that's like flying around. Everything is controlled, and that's their landfill. But when you read this story of how you describe this process, you realize only 1% of the planet may understand it, and the remaining 99% would never even care. And this is probably the story of your company or your project. No one cares about it because it is not simple enough to understand. So I want to show you an example of how you can simplify this script. The garbage is transformed into ash by Singapore's incineration plants and then transported to this island. That's the original. You just say, they take the entire country's garbage and burn it. I get it. It is then disposed of into the water between two islands. The water is divided into cells. They collect the ashes and ship to a man-made island to bury in special waters. You don't need to know some of the details. It's just special waters. They just burn it. You don't need to use the word incinerate. Just burn. My mom knows what burn means. Incinerate is too academic for people to understand. So we take these right words and we put them into a video. We add a little bit of music, and then this is the final story of how Singapore cleans. Remember, in the title, there's not even waste management. I don't say Singapore's waste management. It's too complicated. How Singapore cleans.
What I'm about to show you will blow your mind just like it blew mine. See, I'm here with my girlfriend vacationing on a nice island off the coast of Singapore. It's pretty, it's clean, it's nice. But what if I told you that this nice island is made of trash? I kid you not, Singapore is so clean that even their trash island looks like this. Not this or this. They take the entire country's garbage, they burn it, collect the ashes, and ship to a man-made island to bury in special waters. All of this while keeping nature clean. It doesn't smell at all, it doesn't hurt the environment, the corals are still alive, the animals are still around, and the jungle is still green. People even come to take wedding photos at a landfill. In many countries, landfills are painful to look at and to visit. This is why everybody needs to see this, because the people of Singapore have made a landfill feel like a resort. That's 1 minute.
Singapore!
It's the same story. It's just a little bit more exciting with a little bit more basic words. And what happens? This website I showed you probably gets 100 views per month for people to like understand the story of Singapore's waste management. But the video we made has reached 136 million people around the world, with 1.6 million people sharing it, 51,000 people writing a comment saying, wow, amazing, and 1 million people clicking like. It's the same story. It's just done with simpler words. If there's anything I want people to remember as we try to tell the story of our projects, our startup, our countries, our nations, our development goals, you need to speak in the language that everybody understands, your mom understands, not in a language that your colleague understands or your professor understands. So to kind of wrap it all up, when we look at a storytelling, every story needs to be simple, organized, and relatable. And that golden three has guided every single video I made. All those 1,000 videos that I made in 1,000 days. Every day you wake up and you say, all right, I'm gonna tell the story of a new country today. How can I make this simple? How can I make people care about this country? Because we all know nobody cares about another person. How do I make you care about a country that's as small as, let's say, the Seychelles? And I have to make it relatable. How can it relate to you? And if you build, as you build a company, you should come up with the assumption that nobody cares. When you start, so I think this is probably because I'm a minority. You know, minorities have, an inferiority complex where, like, you grow up as a kid, nobody cares about you. Oh, you're not the majority, so we don't care about you. And when you grow up with an inferiority complex, you always think that nobody cares about me. And that complex is why I think Nas Daily succeeded, is because every day I wake up and I say, nobody cares about my project. Nobody cares about my videos. Nobody cares about my opinion. And I need to work like a donkey to make you care. So I'm going to use simple words. I'm going to be efficient with your time. You don't need 10 minutes of your time. I'll just give you the idea in 1 minute. I'll scream to get your attention, and I'll put my video wherever you hang out. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And I'm going to make it as simple as possible for you to listen to my story. And because of that, 31 million people decided to follow Nas Daily. So as I summarize this journey, I really want people who are listening to this, and I don't know everybody's personal story. Don't buy expensive gear. Don't go hire expensive agencies. Agencies also don't know what they're doing because they've never done it themselves. And don't go think my idea is great. It's really not about it's not about the idea. It's not about the agency, and it's not about the gear. It's just about using the right words. The right words can change the world. I'm 100% a believer in this slide, and I hope you believe in that too. And I hope you choose the right words to describe and tell your own story. Thank you guys so much for this. I hope it was helpful. And I know I finished it a little bit too fast, but I got overly excited. I'm sorry.
Not too fast at all. That's great. Thank you so much, Nas. And yeah, we talked about a few things before. And Nuseir, I should have said rather than Nuseir or any other strange pronunciations of his name. So Nas is obviously a lot easier. And as you say, we need to very much unlearn English. We, in fact, particularly in UN agencies, we tend to have everything as
Shakespearean English
as possible.
You learn Shakespearean English.
Well, I wish it were so. At least it would be poetic, but no, it tends to be very obscure, as I say. And simple, organized, and relatable is very much, I think, what has very much come across, I think, from your videos. In fact, you mentioned Singapore. I was many years ago, before social media was even a term that anybody understood. I was in Singapore doing a small commercial on new water. It was water which is actually wastewater, and it's recycled in Singapore. It's not a commercial for them, but from sewage, and they actually put it into bottles, and they market it as new water, and people will drink it. So,
Can I show you something? Can I show you something?
Absolutely.
Okay, just see this real quick. Sorry.
There we go. See, you've got a lot more hits than me, I'm sure of that. There you go. I did drink some.
See? What I'm holding right now is normal
same
water.
thing.
But what if I told you that this...
I made the same video too because it is fascinating.
Indeed. So, I mean, that's great. I mean, I think also some of the things that that were very much coming across, as I say, is very much that that personal relationship that you have with the subject matter. And I think your search for telling a good story, what the right story is something which obviously we all struggle with. I mean, for our audience here of innovators, we've got quite a few questions. Actually, you've definitely stimulated people's interest. In fact, I'll let them have a bit of the limelight here because there are, say, a fair amount of questions that people would want to hear from you. And I'll just look at the time now. We've still got a good bit of time, so you don't have to rush through these. The first question that we received, and thank you very much for that presentation, that's great. I just wanted to say the questions that we have here are quite wide, and we also got about people in over 100 countries around the globe as well. So, and these, in fact, if the interpreters can keep up, we're actually going out in Russian, Arabic, English, French, Chinese, and Spanish. There's interpretation for all of those languages too. So
I wonder how they interpreted the Singapore waste management thing. Did they interpret the whole thing?
I don't know. You'll have to ask somebody listening in Russian, Arabic, English, French, Chinese, or Spanish. So I'll try and slow down as well, but we'll probably help the interpretation on that. But look, first question I've got here, I'll just read them in the order that I received them. Do you have a framework that you use to make remarkable videos?
What's a framework?
I mean, when you go, I presume they're trying to say that when you go out and shoot something, do you have a workflow? Do you have something that you stick to every time? Yeah.
So as you make more videos, you realize that different structures have different results. So if you start with the problem and then go to the solution, those videos I found to be the most effective. The videos where okay, guys, I'm about to tell you a problem, but after that, I'm about to tell you the solution to it. And then you talk about the problem for 1 minute, then you talk about the solution, then you talk about call to action. That structure has worked quite nicely. There's other structures as well, which is like, you talk about the intro, you talk about the solution, and then you talk about the call to action. There's no need to mention the problem. Like the new water thing is just cool. The new water in Singapore is just cool. That's it. So I think so. One thing that I did with Nas Daily is my first framework was a 1 minute video, right? Like you have your painting. You see, like if I tell you now, paint something, Max, your first question you're going to say, well, where the hell am I going to paint and what am I going to paint? If I tell you, paint something here, you'd be like, okay, I get it. This is my space. I'm going to paint something from here to here, and this is going to be a person right this. So when you have like limitations, you can actually be a lot more creative. And so I really urge people to have limitations. Creativity actually flourishes, or creativity grows in captivity. It's not in freedom. This whole thing, have freedom and do whatever you want. No, limit yourself and you will become a crap ton more creative. And that I found to be fundamentally awesome. So 1 minute, boom. Every video starts with the title. Every video ends with, that's 1 minute, see you tomorrow. And that became the tagline. Okay, I have the beginning and the end, done. Now, the middle, what do I do? And that's the story, the story comes in the middle. Okay, intro, 10 seconds, problem, 15 seconds, solution, 20 seconds. That's 1 minute, see you tomorrow. And then you do the same thing the next day. Now, my framework works for me, but people must find out their own framework.
And for innovators promoting their ideas, their inventions, etc., I think obviously this is a very good starting point. I wanted to also ask you another question here. The question has come in: how do you deal with the fact that there are some stories that people don't want to hear?
What's an example of a story that people don't want to hear? Do you have an example?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose something that might upset people in some way or another. You know.
Oh, so it's like upsetting, not boring.
I think probably that's the case. Yeah. I mean, I would guess so. I'm just second guessing here the question that has come in.
You know, so there's two types of stories: one that are upsetting and one that are boring, right? The boring ones that people don't want to hear, those are harder. So like, you know, the stories that are upsetting to people are actually stories that people do want to hear. Like, you know what I mean? Like, take, for example, Palestine, Israel. Like, everybody's so upset by anything you make about Palestine and Israel. It's so highly political. It's crazy. They don't want to hear the story of the other side. But in reality, they listen to it and they comment on it and they dislike it and they vote it down and they give you death threats. You know, it's like, there's no such thing as a story that people don't want to hear. If there's a story that people don't want to hear, it means they just don't agree with it, but they still heard it. You know what I mean? So I don't think that story exists. But boring stories, there's a lot of stories. We can start with ITU. What the hell is ITU? No offense.
No, none taken.
There's a lot of stories that happen in ITU that frankly are maybe too boring for the average person. Similarly, in my life, you know, right now, there's a lot of stories that are happening in my daily life that are too boring for someone to hear. So I don't make videos about them. So it's a constant struggle to make things interesting. And we're moving into a world where, like, you know, you have like the Nemo, you know, the Nemo, like a fish attention span, you know, 6-8 seconds and I'm out. So the way I do it is I start with something relatable, and that's why I put relatable there. For example, you know, there's this like technology company that reached out to my company, Nas Studios, and they said, "Hey, we build technology. We're just like 1,000 software engineers. We have the most boring office in the world, and we want you to tell stories about what we do." And then you have to think, well, you know, you're doing God's work. Same with ITU. You're doing God's work.
Absolutely.
But it's like, how do you make it more exciting? So what we suggested to them is, all right, where is your technology being used? Well, they say, okay, our technology is being used in hospitals and highways. I said, okay, what does it do in a hospital? They say, well, it makes the queue faster. You know, the queuing, patient queuing, it makes the queuing faster. That's it. That's the story. That's the story. The world's fastest hospital? You know, everybody is annoyed by long waiting hours at hospitals. You just sit there for 3-4 hours waiting for the doctor. Now, if their software helps me save 10 minutes every time I visit a doctor, then I love this company. And that is sort of so you start with the end product and then you work your way up.
Brilliant. Now, do you struggle more now to get your stories out than when you started? That there is much more content out there? I mean, basically people are saturated with content. And are people tired of videos is a question that's come in.
It's like asking, are people tired of the internet? I think we're at 2% of the way there. We're at 2% of the way in terms of content and internet. We have 98%. I should make a t-shirt that says 2% internet or content. I should. That's a good idea, actually. I'm going to write it down.
Don't forget it.
Yeah, don't forget it. 1 second. 2%. No, I think that mentality kills you when you think that we have too much content. If you look at the content we have, yes, we have too many videos, but we don't have enough good videos. We don't have enough good content. And you know, if we did have enough good content, you guys would have invited someone else, you know, someone closer to home, someone like, okay, nearby, you know, everybody's making content. So that's what I'm saying. You should start with the mindset that there are 70 million stories that are created every day that are interesting. The Washington Times, the Washington Post, New York Times, Fox News, CNN, they tell 300 stories every day, which means in the world, there are 69,900,000 whatever thousand stories that are created every day that go untold. That is the assumption you've got to start with. And that is why we think there's a million more stories to cover.
Questions come in. We say there was no holds barred. How can we overcome fake news with real stories? Specifically pointed it in some of the story a story you may have posted recently, but
So I've come to the realization that you will never overcome fake news. It will always be part of humans, because humans in general we're not like, as Yuval Noah Harari says, we're a post-truth species. We don't care about the truth. That is me and you, Max. You don't care about the truth, and I don't. You know, I mean, look at religion. I love religion. Look at religion. There's not a single piece of evidence to prove that religion is real. Yet, 80% of the world believes in it, and we die for it. What? So, you know, some religions are maybe correct. We'll never know. We're all taking bets. But what I'm saying is we tell stories to each other, and we don't necessarily need to show evidence. And that is the human behavior, and that'll just continue to exist with social media. So if that's the case, the real question should be, how do we limit negative fake stories and promote more positive fake stories? That's the question. Because, you know, one of the fakest stories in the world is a country. What is a country? It's a fake story saying that we are better than another country. That's fake to the max. You know, there's nothing unique about a Swiss person, and there's nothing unique about a German. But when a German thinks they're like much better, you get problems. You know, there's always that stuff that happens with fake stories. So you should aim to tell good stories that make the world better. You should go and tell a story telling a kid in a slum, telling them you can be president. The chances of that happening are 0.0000001%. However, we should believe in that fake story because that 0.00001% is worth it. And so that would be my answer.
Absolutely. There's a lot of, another question here, there's a lot of hype with the topic of technology and entrepreneurship. How can we make stories that are relatable and actionable instead?
How can we make stories that are relatable and actionable? What was the first part of the question?
There's a lot of hype about technology, stories about technology and entrepreneurship. Basically, how can we make stories that are relatable and actionable instead?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. You know, when I was making videos, I'm still making videos, but in the 1,000-day journey, you know, I see a lot of people come to me with an app idea. They say, make a video about my app, make a video about my website. And I always tell them, man, it's really difficult to tell the story of an app. It's really difficult. The average person doesn't care about your app. And so that's why the most interesting technology companies that I can make videos about are the ones that mix real world with online world. It's like a mix. So it's something that I can touch. People relate to things that they can touch, or humans, you know. So if you want to tell stories of technology, tell me right now how this app of yours fixes my immediate life right now. I don't care about your technology. I don't care about your crypto. I don't care about whatever. I only care about the output to fix my life. And that's how I think, that's the mindset I start with when I tell stories of technology company. And now Nas Academy is a technology company, and I'm finding it really hard to tell the story of Nas Academy, you know? It's a tech company. So you have to work extra hard when you're a tech entrepreneur. If you're a food entrepreneur, you know how easy it is? Just make a nice plate of food, say, this is awesome food, you know, eat it, yum, 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 you know, easier to shoot. But an app is much harder to shoot.
Absolutely. Now, I think one of these has already been answered. How can we explain the importance of storytelling to innovators that don't believe that they need this skill? I think we've pretty much answered that one. But from your point of view, it says, should the story be completely true and with real characters or personas, or can we weave an imagined story in order to better convey the idea? So that's an interesting one there.
Look at Hollywood. What is Hollywood? All the movies that are based on a true story are in reality dramatized true stories. It's almost never. If Hollywood true story movies are actually true, they would be called documentaries. You know, when I watched what do you call it, the Titanic, that wasn't called a documentary, my friend.
King of the world, yeah.
Right? Like, there's always that fake element of storytelling.
Yeah.
And you know, even when the video that I played about Singapore's waste management, I said, they turned a landfill into a resort. That's fake news. They didn't turn it into a resort because fundamentally, technically speaking, there is no resort there. There's no one sleeping. There's no guest services. There's no paying to stay there. But I dramatized it a little bit to get the idea. And I'm a big proponent of that because we've been doing it for millennia. Religion, politics, Hollywood, everybody has been dramatizing things, and human species will continue to over-dramatize things.
Talking about the story, how do you ensure that your story is as simple as it can be, especially if you're not used to communicating in that way?
I think of my mom. You know, you think of your mom, literally. Max, your mom speaks English, right? So I guess.
She does, just about, yeah.
But does she speak Spanish?
She does, indeed.
Oh,
yeah.
She doesn't or does?
No, she does, of course. No, she's Spanish, yeah.
Oh, she's Spanish. Oh,
Yes.
Wow, that was like a complete coincidence.
And,
okay, anyway.
Yeah, she's a language teacher, so she was a language teacher. She's very much retired now, but yeah.
Well, then the mom test does not apply to your mom. It applies to my mom. My mom speaks Arabic and Hebrew and a little bit of English. So every time I tell a story, I ask myself, can my mom understand this video? And if she can, I launch it. If she cannot, I don't launch it. I only launch videos that my mom can understand. And everybody has a mom or a dad or a relative that is, you know, that is not as advanced or not as technologically advanced or academically advanced as we are. Do your own mom test or your own father test or grandpa test. And I think that is really, really helpful.
Right. No, I mean, in fact, when I was directing theatre, I used to tell my actors sometimes who confuse loudness for energy and for communication. I used to say, well, just imagine that you're telling the story to a little bunch of school children just sitting there at your feet there, and they would soften up, and then they would, you know, but the communication would carry on, and that would be a lot stronger. And I think absolutely, that's some very good advice. Either the mum or the small child advice. They're telling a story to one of your children, which is what one of the speakers in the previous session was saying, which I resonated very much with. Can you tell us what steps you're using to build the story? Are you thinking about the characters first? And what is better, to have only one persona or more in the story, or more than one within the story?
Ooh, wow, that is a highly specific question.
Very much so, yeah. They're getting technical here.
What's better, like a one character or multiple? So the answer, unfortunately, is a little bit boring. It depends. You know, if I'm making a video about a country, then I try to involve hundreds of locals. So I put in 500, 600 locals, and I say, say, welcome to Canada, welcome to Canada. So I show as many people as possible because they represent Canada. They represent an entire country. If I'm making a video about a company or a product or something like that, I try to limit it to one person. People fall in love with people, specifically with individuals. That's how marriage exists, right? You fall in love with one person. So I always find it really hard when there's a company that was started by two people. It's really, really difficult because then you say these co-founders and this guy and this girl and blah, blah, blah. But if I say this person almost died, but then he did this, and then he is the one or she is the one you must fall in love with, then it's a much easier, like, wow, I want to be like this person. It's not like, I want to be like these three guys. It's so much less interesting. You know?
That's what Mark Zuckerberg thought, is it?
Yeah.
Get rid of his partners, yeah.
So get rid of your co-founders. That's my first advice.
Exactly, absolutely. So moving on, do you think that some platforms are more important today? Do you have a personal favorite? I'm presuming this means social media platforms.
Do I have a favorite social media platform?
Yes. I mean, do you think that there are some platforms that are more important than others to get your message across?
Yeah. So look, so my audience is humans, right? If your audience is business people, then it's different. My audience is humans. Anyone with two eyes and is alive is my target market. Even one eye, you know? Anyone that's alive is my target market. So for that reason, I have to go to the most popular, biggest social media network, Facebook. But you can say Facebook is dying, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, the most popular social media network in the world is Facebook. 2.4 billion people go on that website every single day or month. Crazy numbers. Now, and that's why I took Facebook as my main platform. And that's why it's much easier to grow virally on the Facebook platform, because that reshare button is powerful. You know, it's very, very powerful. So one day you see my video, you reshare it, all of a sudden I've reached 100 of your personal Facebook friends. So now Max and his friends and his mom know Nas Daily. And when Max and his mom talk about Nas Daily, then they think Nas Daily is bigger than it actually is. Wow, you also know Nas Daily? And then they spread it to other people. So it's not like silos viewership, it's social viewership. I love that. So we were able to penetrate an entire country within 2 days with just one video. I have just arrived to Albania. Within 1 day, everybody shares that video. The next day, the prime minister wants to meet. It's incredible how it works.
I know, I watched that. It was great. And in fact, you say you engage people. It felt like you'd actually rented a crowd, but obviously you hadn't. You managed to engage those people.
Yeah. So Facebook is if you want mass audience. If you want money, don't go to Facebook. If you want money, go to LinkedIn or Twitter. There's a lot more powerful people on Twitter and LinkedIn. And it's a lot less virality. It's a little bit more slow moving. It's a lot about who you know, what's your title, blah, 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 indirect premium messaging, blah, 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 blah. So that kind of world I'm not very good at. I would like to be trained to be better at. So if anyone at ITU wants to help me, that's why I'm doing this show, this talk.
Don't worry, absolutely. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people reaching out to you. But I mean, you're also on other platforms as well. I mean, my 15-year-old daughter knew you, so I mean,
oh, cool.
You know, you're, and she's never been on Facebook in her life, so I think.
So TikTok and YouTube, yeah, those are other Instagram, but those are subgroups or like not as important. 90% of my viewership comes on the Facebook platform. It has its pros and cons, but thank you. Say thank you to your daughter.
I will do. No, well, you'll be very interested to watch the archive of this. But look, in principle here, I think there are obviously a lot of innovators out there. Another question that's come in, how can we choose the right story for our company? Because there are so many things happening every day in our lives. So in principle, how can people hone the message down? How can they get their message across in the most efficient way?
So it's a numbers game. It's the way statistics works. It's a numbers game. So the way I used to do it, I arrive in Albania, and then I say, okay, dear Albanians, please tell me stories about your country. All right. Then someone says, make a video about our food, make a video about our community, make a video about this and this and this and this and this. So you get hundreds of ideas. So you must start with hundreds and hundreds of ideas. And then you start like cutting down on what's boring, what's not relatable, what's interesting, what's not. And so my admission rate for a good story to become a video is like 2 to 3%. So out of 100 video ideas, 3 of them are good and become videos. And the remaining 97 just float in the air. Someone else makes them, you know? And so you got to start with increasing your sample size, and then you start cutting down.
Now you obviously, as we saw, what you started off with a drone, a backpack, a camera, a phone, or whatever it might be on that. What's your situation now? I mean, you've got people working for you, creating wonderful graphics. You've got people working around the clock, sitting behind you and giving you stories. What's the situation? Nobody there right now, but there was once. Yeah.
So I'm very lucky that now all I need is like this. So I'm very lucky that we have someone else to manage the camera, someone else to do the permits, someone else to find the stories. I still script all the stories, so I haven't been able to find someone else to write the stories. But we're now Nas Daily is 44 people around the world. We tell stories of governments. So governments started to come to us and say, "Hey, I have a nuclear power plant. Can you tell the story of it?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, we'd love to." It's amazing. It's so satisfying to tell the big stories. So now my main job is to go out, talk to people like you, and sell them on the idea that 1, you need to fire your agency. 2, you need to engage the independent creators, the ones with 50,000 followers and 100,000 followers, and just like give them full creativity to tell the story. And if you want us to be one of them, sure. We'd love the honor to tell the story of your company, government, product, whatever it is. So that's all I think about these days. But some days I miss being on the road.
And Nas Academy, you said you were having trouble selling that or telling that story. What's the whole premise behind that?
Now you want me to tell the story now, don't you?
In 60 seconds or less, because
Oh man, look, it's Nas Academy. Doctors go to medical school, lawyers go to law school, creators go to Nas Academy. That's it. That's the story. In today's world, everyone can be a creator. 10 years ago, that never existed. This job of Nas Daily did not exist. You said ITU has been around for 150 years.
And more, yeah, 155 or something, yeah.
You think there was a Facebook 150 years ago? You think there was a Facebook 20 years ago? It didn't exist. So there's incredible amounts of jobs in the future, digital storytelling skills. And Nas Academy wants to become the Harvard of that field. That's the story of Nas Academy. I hope it makes sense. And we're aiming to build that mission for the next 100 years. Maybe 155 years or so.
Okay. Looks like somebody's been, they say, because they're sending me all these questions in about WhatsApp. Looks like somebody from the United Nations, one of the United Nations agencies has written in, how can short stories convey complex issues? I think we talked a little bit about that, but it says, how can UN agencies, you couldn't be any more specific than that, move away from boring reports, but still tell the full truth?
What is the full truth?
Exactly. Indeed.
There is no full truth. You must fundamentally start with that thing. There is parts of the truth. And you must decide what part of the truth you want to tell. Because even if you tell the full truth, the average consumer of your content will only selectively remember part of that truth. You will never be able to convey the full truth into someone's brain. Similarly, at your 4-year degree at Harvard, they taught me a full curriculum. I remember 3% of it. So if that's the case, instead of making one big video that shows the full truth, You should make 100 videos that show 100-part truth. I'm not advocating for fake news. I'm saying part truth. And start with that. So you need to, as a UN agency, first of all, you need to cut your costs and you need to cut the time it takes to create a video. Most agencies work with every 2 months, you make a video. Every 5 months, you make a video. We're called Nas Daily. So we come up with the assumption that a story should not take more than 1 day to tell. And so we don't try to tell the story of the Israel-Palestinian conflict. We don't do that. We tell part of it in 1 minute. Hey, I wish my neighbor was Jewish. Why is my neighbor not Jewish? Why am I living in my own race and they're living in their own race? And that's it. And just talking about that problem signifies the whole bigger issue of Palestine and Israel without talking for 5-hour documentaries about it. So that would be my suggestion to the UN agency. And if they have any more questions, of course, they can email me directly, nas@nasdaily.com. Happy to engage in those conversations. Look, you guys, Max and everyone at ITU and UN, like you're doing God's work, right? Like without you, millions would die, literally die. Without Nas Daily, nothing would change. So, I don't want to like lessen of the impact of what you guys do. You are truly God's work. I do want to emphasize the importance of telling the story of what you do, because you're not marketing it as effectively as you could. And if a tree fell in the forest and nobody saw it fall, then the tree did not fall.
Well, I mean, that's perhaps a great little ending paragraph there. You gave me a challenge before. You said, "Oh, if I asked you to paint something, what would you do?" And if you had a piece of paper, this is one I prepared earlier. I don't know if the camera will pick it up here. We've got this great background here. Here we go. Story there. Story. I'm an avid doodler there, but that was something that when I was working on this, I started to write it. But I mean, in principle, you started off with personal stories that your personal journey, let's say, which you documented. That became something which was much more universal. Do you feel that you've succeeded in getting your message across? Of course, you've got a lot of followers here, much more than most of us would ever hope for in 10 lifetimes. But do you think that you've managed to achieve what you set out to do, and what are you looking forward to in the future?
Yes, I actually have. So now I feel like that the remaining 64% of my life will be well spent, because now I find meaning in what I do, which is something I couldn't find previously. So yes, I found it. Thank God. The next mission really is, how do you, we've succeeded. How do we make others succeed? How do we build tools and services and products that allow the next Nas Daily to emerge from wherever in the world? And that's really what keeps me up at night. How do I continue the Nas Daily mission even when I'm asleep? I wish I could do this without actually doing it.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And we hopefully will catch up with you again, maybe next year at the Global Innovation Forum. But of course, I know that people will be following you online and interacting with you. And we're out of time. We're out of time. But it's been an amazingly fast hour here. But thank you so much for joining us. And it's been really inspirational and super engaging. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Max, thank you. It was really a pleasure talking to you. You made it engaging. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for bouncing back the jokes. And say hello to your daughter and to your mom.
I will do. You're too kind. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.